Good morning, and thank you for joining us for the role of boundaries in teen development. We are so pleased to have Dr. Unadi Jain as our presenter today. Dr. Jain is an impactful keynote speaker, TEDx presenter, and author known for inspiring audiences at organizations, schools, colleges, and universities. With a passion for personal development, leadership, and understanding generational differences, Dr. Jain helps organizations foster collaboration across multiple generations, creating environments where people work in harmony and achieve their highest potential. As an experienced life coach, she works with teens, parents, and adults, guiding them toward personal growth and success. Her insights on behavioral and generational dynamics provide invaluable tools for creating positive change both in personal lives and workplaces. Active in Rotary, she drives change through service, empowering young people to become confident, compassionate leaders who make a lasting impact. Her next upcoming book, Everything Begins With You, further explores the themes of self-empowerment and growth, offering readers a roadmap to unlocking their inner potential. Whether delivering TEDx talks, authoring books, or conducting keynotes, Dr. Jain is dedicated to helping individuals and organizations embrace transformation. With a passion for bridging generational gaps and fostering understanding, she inspires others to act and lead lives of purpose and impact. Thank you for being here, Dr. Jain. I will now turn it over to you. We can't hear you yet.
All right, I actually gave a speech without you hearing us. All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you to the Fairfax team. Thank you, Diana, for coordinating this. It's sad that our journey comes to an end today. This is the fourth webinar of the series that I did since last year with the Fairfax County Public Schools. And hopefully next year, I will be there with you in person and online to share how we can together grow confident young adults. So today we're going to talk about the role of boundaries in teen development. We do have a lot of content to cover, and it's very deep intent content. So I would urge everybody to get a pen and piece of paper out and make notes as much as you can, because these are practical strategies that I will be sharing with you in the next 1 hour. All right, so who am I? I think Diana has given a fairly deep introduction for me with a good biodata, but I'm gonna, so just to add to that, I've been doing this for a decade and I love every moment of what I do. I study behavioral patterns, and the way I coach our young adults or parents is through visiting 52 different concepts. I'm also a meditation and a yoga instructor, and I like to use meditation strategies when I coach either parents or when I speak in universities and colleges, or when I'm working with our young adults. I have a 21-year-old who is graduating next month, super excited for that, and beginning his master's in August at George Mason University. So I'm going to ask you to take out your phones, which I normally never do, but this time what we're going to do is we're going to take a few minutes, scan the QR code on the screen, and this is going to take you to a parenting quiz. And I'd like you to put your email in, take this parenting style quiz, and the answers will be sent to your email. Don't be too hard on yourself. Don't question yourself. Don't overthink the process. Just click whatever comes to your mind at the first go, because this is going to help you identify where you are and how you need to utilize the strategies that I'm going to share with you in the next 60 minutes to kind of adjust your parenting style based on your child's behavior. So let's take, Diana, can we time this? Can you just ask them to stop at about 2 minutes? Give us a warning at about 2 minutes, please. Thank you.
Time.
Wonderful. Thank you for taking that parenting quiz. Again, don't be too hard on yourself. This is just identifying where you are and how you need to adjust, and the answers will be sent in your email. Moving on. All right. Why do I do what I do? I think it's very important to identify the why so that you can be impactful in life. I work with multiple generations, and I really think that every generation has something to lead and learn from each other. And I'm here to bridge that generational divide. And I strongly believe that behind every action, there is an emotion. So when we say either for a parent or for a child that they're having a moment, or they're misbehaving, or they're being rude, there is an underlying emotion under that. And what I do is I help you break down that emotion so that we can bring generations together, specifically parent and children. And why? Because my belief is that if you have a strong bond with your child, or the child has a strong bond with a parent, then when they grow up, their journey is very different than a person who does not have a strong foundation with their parents. That's why I do what I do. As I said, the relationship between teens and parents has a significant role on brain development. When a child has a strong relationship with a parent, their brain directly relates to socially healthy behaviors. The way they show up in the world is completely different than the people who do not feel secure in their parental relationship. And whatever I'm telling you is not based on what I feel. This is all based on research. Now, considering we're talking about boundary, let's talk about what type of boundaries and what is a boundary. We're talking about three boundaries. We're talking about emotional boundaries, physical boundaries, and psychological boundaries. Why boundaries? And I like to talk about boundaries not only related to teens, but if your parents, you're listening to this, then it's also boundaries related to your partners, your friends, your family, because a boundary is really protecting your own emotional, physical, psychological needs. In case of a teenager, it's extremely important to have these boundaries because they do not know how to establish those boundaries. And we will continue to talk about what are emotional needs, what are physical needs, and what are psychological needs. But this is just an introduction to what is a boundary. It's a personal limit, or in terms of teenagers, we like to look at it as a guideline. We are telling our teenagers, let's say we establish a boundary saying that you need to sleep at 10 o'clock. We are telling a teenager, this is the guideline as a parent that I'm setting for you, because I think this is what is good for you and you're not capable of taking your decisions yourself. So I'm going to set this guideline for you. What that does to a teenager's brain is that initially they may give a pushback. They begin to understand the role of boundaries in life, and that impacts their mental and physical and health, mental and physical well-being. Now let's talk about emotional boundaries for teenagers. What are emotional boundaries? Recognizing and expressing feelings, developing self-compassion, asking for help. How many of us refuse to ask for help even as adults? Asserting personal needs and desires, learning to say no, recognizing manipulation, understanding limits in relationships, understanding consent. These are the typical boundaries that we need to set. Again, these are boundaries that we need to set for our children, for them to grow into healthy young adults. Right now, we're just talking about the type of boundaries. So that's why the pen and piece of paper that you took out, I would urge you to take notes and then see if you have questions and we can address those questions in the end. But somehow my keyboard is refusing to move. Now let's talk about physical boundaries. What are physical boundaries? Respecting personal space, recognizing and responding to unwanted physical contact. Our teenagers don't know how to respect personal space. They don't know when they go out, when, especially, let's talk in terms of girls. What is wrong physical contact? When somebody is touching you in a bad way, what is right, what is wrong? This is again boundaries, establishing privacy boundaries, recognizing signs of abusive behavior, understanding peer pressure. Um, when somebody wants to come close to you, do they need to ask you? Do they need to? All of these things are physical boundaries, setting limits for affection. Some people don't like to hug. Some people don't like to hold. Some people are big huggers. So everybody has different limits. And these are the boundaries that we need to talk about with our children to identify what is their boundary so that they can go outside and exercise these boundaries. So teaching teens to respect their own personal space and the personal space of others helps them understand boundaries in relationships. You are their guiding principle. Why am I having this webinar? The reason that I'm having this webinar is often we, as even adults, get carried away in emotion and don't understand why and when we need to set these boundaries. So the reason that I've broken this down in such intricate detail is to help you understand that what are emotional, physical, and psychological boundaries in terms of teenagers or adults. But right now, because we're talking to teens, because we're talking about teens, let's look at it from their perspective. Digital boundaries. Again, they don't know how to establish this. So, social media privacy settings. Do you want them to have limited screen time? And this can open a Pandora's box, and we can again have those questions in the end. So make note of these questions. But managing online friendships, like when my son was young, he was 7 or 8 years old. He was talking to this random person on the phone, and he continued to talk to this random person for weeks until I noticed one day that there was something wrong. And that's when I asked him. If I hadn't noticed, there could have been a lot of trouble there. So, managing online friendships, whether that's on the phone or chatting with somebody, avoiding sharing sensitive information, respecting others' privacy, being mindful of digital footprint. Once we put things out on the internet, they're there for life. So, what are your children putting out? Do they know that if they put something out, that's never going to go away? What is their digital footprint? How do you interact with people online, taking breaks from technology? Are you, and we'll talk about modeling behavior later on, but are you taking breaks from technology yourself? What does it do to take a break from technology? And seeking help for online safety concerns. Very important to teach our teenagers to adjust their social media privacy settings to control who can see their posts, photos, and personal information, because this will help them protect their own privacy. Now, so we've talked about what are boundaries, what are the 3 types of boundaries. Now let's talk about what lack of boundaries does. I often hear in my when I coach parents, I often hear that people say it's easier said than done. It's very difficult to establish these boundaries. Yes, I never said it was easy. Are you going to get pushback? Absolutely, you're going to get pushback. But the lack of boundaries is far more difficult. The impact of the lack of boundaries is far more difficult to deal with than to actually establish these boundaries, because the lack of boundaries correlates to maladjustment, various kind of disorders, and dysfunction. What does dysfunction include? Social difficulties. If your child is constantly on social media and has no way of interacting with the outside world, does not believe in interacting in person, especially this generation and the new generation that is coming, they have social media, they're so comfortable in their digital world that they've forgotten what in-person contact is. So aggression in interpersonal relationships, emotional regulation issues. When there is a lack of boundaries, that is when depression, anxiety, aggression, all of these things happen, because teenagers forget the art of communication and emotional self-regulation. Emotional regulation. Let's take an example here. Boundaries teach teens how to manage and express their emotions appropriately. So let's say your child comes to you for something, they want to go out at 11 o'clock at night. They want to come back at 12 o'clock at night, and you're not agreeable to that. They have a meltdown. They're unable to emotionally regulate themselves. If at that time you are also unable to emotionally regulate themselves, there is going to be a clash. There is going to be a tantrum. There is going to be a fight. There is going to be an argument. And eventually, either one person will give in or the other person will give in, but there will be tension. And what are you teaching the child at that point in time? That when there is a difficult moment, when you're asking for something, you don't have conversations, you actually argue and fight because you're unable to emotionally regulate yourself. Versus if you have a boundary, when your child asks you that they want to be out till 12 o'clock, and you have a boundary and you express that boundary without emotion because you're able to emotionally regulate themselves, that's what you're going to teach your child. So, in a nutshell, what am I trying to say? If you would like your teenager to emotionally regulate themselves, you need to emotionally regulate yourself. You need to work on yourself as a parent because the child is learning from you. And what does that emotional regulation look like? A very stable behavior, whether that's when a child is asking for something that you don't agree with, or the child is being rude, or the child is being disrespectful. How are you establishing that boundary? By being emotionally regulated yourself. What else does boundary do? They teach teens to develop an understanding of social skills. They learn how to go out and interact with the world. Developing social boundaries helps to establish an understanding of how to conduct themselves in social interactions. What does that mean? When you're unable to emotionally regulate yourself, and let's say you go out and there is a person, a random person, or a friend, or a coworker, or a family member who expresses views that are not agreeable to you, and you're unable to emotionally regulate yourself, what does that do to you? You actually either yell or scream or have a meltdown or rudely disagree with the person. Versus if you're able to emotionally regulate yourself because you established that boundary with your teen earlier, they're able to have more calm social interactions. They're able to agree to disagree with the world. Think of it, independence and autonomy. Think of it like working in a box. You establish a boundary, and let's call that boundary a box. Your child understands in their childlike brain that this is the box that I can work inside of. It makes them feel safe, but they feel independent in that box. So it gives them a sense of autonomy. Of course, this box needs to keep shifting and changing as the age grows. So boundaries help them feel safe in a box. And they enjoy that. Hard to believe, but they do enjoy that. Structure is very important for self-esteem because there are so many things that your teenager does not know that when you establish boundaries and they know a structure and they're able to function in that structure, it makes them feel good about themselves because they know that there's somebody standing behind them who's building that structure for them and they can move in that structure while their hormones are working, bodies are changing, social circles are changing, schools are changing. Everything around them is changing. There's one thing that's constant, which is structure, which you have built for them as a parent. And that gives them a positive self-image. It tells them they're safe, they can respect themselves, and they begin to think, they begin to have confidence in their own selves because it's building their self-esteem. So structure builds self-esteem. How does structure come? Structure comes through consistent boundaries. Of course, as I mentioned, they create a safe space for exploration and learning, that box that we talked about. It's a secure environment. They know that they can move around in this box. They don't have to go outside of it. Inside this box, if something happens, you're there to protect them. So it gives them it establishes a safe environment for them. Cognitive development. Believe it or not, but setting limits encourages problem solving and critical thinking skills. Critical thinking skills. How? Again, let's go back to the box. Think of it. They have a box that they can function in. In that box, because they feel safe, any problem that comes their way, they're able to think creatively and solve that problem because they know they're inside the box. And if anything goes wrong, you're there to help them. Versus when there is no boundary, it's a big playing field. They don't know where to go. They don't know how to sort it. Here, they're feeling safe. They're like, I didn't do anything that my parent told me not to do. They told me that to be back at 10 o'clock at night. Okay, so that's my box. My box is still 10 o'clock. As long as I follow that boundary, I am safe. So I can problem solve within that box. They form healthy relationships. Like I said, they can emotionally regulate themselves. So when they go out in the social world, because they're used to healthy boundaries and they understand the personal boundaries for others, and they begin to build healthier friendships, healthier relationships, and they're able to agree to disagree. Now, let's move on to multiple purposes. They encourage personal growth and development. Like I said, they bring a sense of autonomy and self-worth. Now, these boundaries, what I would like to say over here is, as parents, sometimes we can be very overpowering. Our love takes over and we want to take care of our children and we want to solve their problems for them. But when we do that, we're actually hindering their growth. So it's a very fine line. How are we going to give them independence and keep them safe and be with them when they need us? And that can only happen when you have those boundaries in place. So they encourage healthy developmental separation and loving detachment. Detachment doesn't mean that you have let go of your child. It means that you're allowing your child to grow in a safe environment without needing to control the outcome. Again, it provides a safety net. Limitations that need as a guide for living a healthy life. Again, are they going to make mistakes in that boundary? Absolutely, without a doubt. Are they going to make mistakes in that box? Yes, they are going to make mistakes in that box. But like I said, it's a safe area for them. They know that if they make mistakes in that box, you'll take care of those mistakes because they're not outside the box. So they provide a safety net for teens. Now, we all know, I think we've heard that quite often, that boundaries help in brain development. How? The frontal lobe is not fully developed until the age of 25. A lot of teenagers come to me and they say, at 21, 22, oh my God, I'm in love. I love this girl. I do this, I do that. Even at 21, 22, while they're capable of taking their decisions themselves, their brain is not developed until 25. So think about it. We talk about 21, 22. Now let's go back to teens. Teens' brains are not developed until 25. They're thinking from the irrational part of their brain. That's where they take their decisions from the back of their brain, which is the irrational part of their brains, the part of the brain which is emotionally driven. They're not logical, they're not rational. So as teenagers, when we give them boundaries, they take these boundaries as they grow up towards being 25, and these boundaries shape their personalities because this is their foundation. This is where they're learning from. So let's say that you've established a boundary with your teenager where you hold them accountable for all of their actions. This is going to be their personality as they continue to grow their brain. So think of it like you have I think of it when I'm coaching teenagers, I think of it like a blank canvas, and you get to paint a picture as a parent the way you want to develop healthy young adults who are capable of taking on the world without being driven emotionally or irrationally. Now, at 16, you may think it's fine to drive with a car full of friends as soon as you get your license. As a parent, we know that's a source of danger and distraction. This is a place for a boundary. Now, I also like to give another example here. Often, parents come to me and they say, my child just doesn't listen to me, and they're distracted by their phones when they're driving the car. I'm going to ask you a question, and you don't need to answer it to anybody or tell anybody about the answer to this, but I need you to think about it. What do you do when you're driving a car? Where is your phone? How connected are you to it? How distracted are you to it when your child is sitting in the car? What have you shown your child since he or she was 6 to 8 years old, starting 6 to 8 years old? How do you use the phone? Teens do not have the capability of putting these boundaries for themselves. And we're going to talk about modeling behavior as we get into it, but I need you to think about this at this moment. Why am I smiling? Because often I hear parents say, my child is very disrespectful. I want you to ask yourself, how do you speak to your child? Is there a please and thank you? Are you disrespecting them? Do you have a loud voice? Are you distracted? Are you on your phone? All of the things that you do is what your child would do. And all of these things are respect. So if you're showing respect towards yourself, towards your partner, towards your child, that's what you will get in return. Benefits of clear rules. How are we doing on time? Okay, we're doing good. Security and stability. It's a predictable environment when we have boundaries. So that gives them security. Clear expectations. So I often hear when I'm coaching teenagers, when I'm saying something, they will ask me, can you break that down for me? Can you tell me that again? Can you explain that to me? Why? Their brains are so tiny and so dissipated and so distracted that they're unable to break down simple instructions unless you clearly lay them out. And what I find with parents, and I used to do that myself too, I'm not clear on what I want from my child. I want you to load the dishwasher. Okay. Why haven't you loaded the dishwasher? I'll load it. You asked me to load the dishwasher. I'll load it. You didn't tell me what to do, when to do. I'll load it. I want you to load the dishwasher every time after we have our breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I want you to do this every day. This is your chore and you're responsible for this. There is no loophole here. You've created a very, very clear boundary. So the next time around it's not done, your child says, I'll do it later. You can gently remind them what that chore and expectation is. Of course, when we have boundaries, there's a less risk of accidents. If you're telling your children to come home at 10 o'clock and without a boundary of 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, you're keeping them safe. Lastly, development of self-discipline. What boundaries do is you're creating a structure and discipline for your child. Eventually, what will happen, and as I said, you're shaping their personality. Eventually, that is who they will become. And instead of you disciplining them, that will become their personality and they will be able to regulate and discipline themselves. It's a sense of responsibility. You're making them accountable for your own actions. You have to finish your homework between 6 to 7 every day. We all know it takes 21 days to form a habit. Eventually, what is going to happen? You're not going to need to tell them because your boundary has been established in their brain that they're supposed to do it between 6 to 7. They become self-accountable. When they don't do it become between 6 to 7, you don't have to nag them because they're holding themselves accountable. So it gives them enhanced responsibility, positive behavior reinforcement. It provides a framework for them on how they're supposed to behave with each of the boundary that you establish. Like we spoke about, improve social skills, consistent expectations. They are not wondering, what is it that my parent wants? Oh, my parent wants me to do my chore, finish my homework between 6 to 7, wake up and do my bed, make sure that I put my dishes in the sink, make sure I load the dishwasher, make sure I do the laundry. This is the time I'm supposed to do it. Make sure I wake up in the morning and brush my teeth. All of these things that we are setting clear rules for, they're very consistent expectations. Nothing is changing. Again, I'm going to go back to when things are constantly changing. Things are constantly changing in a teenager's life. Constantly. Everything is up for grabs, whether that's their hormones, whether that's their relationships, whether that's their school, whether that's their peers, whether that's changes in their classroom. Anything that you talk about is constantly changing. There's nothing that is standard, that is regulated. So when you have consistent expectations of them, whether they show it to you that they like it or not, they like it because it puts them in a place of strength. Emotional regulation again. If you learn to emotionally regulate yourself, they will emotionally regulate themselves. What does that do? It gives them emotional regulation skills. And as children learn to manage frustration and disappointment, as we all know, there are tons of frustration and disappointment every day in our lives. How are we teaching our children to bounce back and develop resilience? I just did a talk on resilience and coping mechanisms for children at the Westminster School, and parents loved it because we often are so quick to save our children that it takes away the power of resilience in them. They're living in a world of Amazon where you click and it's at your doorstep. You ask something from your parent, you get it. You put something on social media, you get an adrenaline rush because you get a like there. So they don't know how to manage frustration and disappointment. Emotional regulation teaches them how to stay calm in times of despair. They're able to make independent choices and decisions within the box. It improves study habits. It promotes academic success. You're giving them, again, a structure. Structure helps them to gain knowledge, to go outside and learn, to excel in academics. And of course, conflict resolution skills. By again, emotional regulation, they learn how to agree to disagree. They learn to live with peers and with friends, and they learn to manage their emotions and resolving conflict because they're developing problem solving skills, they're developing critical thinking skills, and they're emotionally regulating themselves. Again, they prevent risky behaviors. They're working inside the box. Where people who are engaged in risky behaviors, think about it. I want you to take a step back and think about the people that you know around you, children you know around you, who constantly take risks. And take a step back and ask yourself, do they have boundaries? Because if they did, they would take less risks. Of course, they're teenagers. They will still take risks, but you'll be privy to it. Respect for authority. Following rules teaches children to respect authority figures. an important skill for navigating various social contexts. When I was a child, I was not taught respect for authority. What happened was, as I grew up, I did not want to respect whether that was anybody at work or anybody at school because I did not have rules. So, following rules teaches children to respect authority figures. And of course, it develops positive parent child relationship because then you're working inside the box. There is less friction. So then a parent and a child come together. And of course, you're preparing your child for adulthood. I often hear my 18, 19, 20-year-old saying adulting is super hard. So with all of these boundaries that you're establishing, you are preparing them for adulthood. We're back to autonomy and independence. Seeking independence is a key for teens and impacts parent-teen relations, especially when setting limits. What does a boundary mean? It means there's certain things you will not tolerate. How can you communicate this? Using I statements helps in communicating boundaries effectively and respectfully, like saying, I won't drive you if you're late, instead of you can't be late, which supports autonomy. Simply stating, because I said so. This is a very common statement, and I think every parent has used it at some time or the other. I have. This is a clearly damaging statement. Because I said so. Undermines trust and can damage your relationship while clear expectations build it. Okay, so this is a question. My 21-year-old is, I am a parent and I'm a great friend. And that's why I had you take the parenting test, the parenting quiz at the beginning. Harsh authoritarian parent methods can harm a teen's development, increasing aggression, damaging trust, risking mental health, and promoting unhealthy behaviors. The because I said so we talked about. Instead, balanced discipline, respecting independence, offering choices, and acknowledging emotions foster empathy. They improve relationships, they build trust, and encourage independence in children. Yes, it's great to be your child's friend after being a parent. If you are not a harsh parent, not an authoritarian parent, but an authoritative parent, where you have balanced discipline and you respect and you establish those boundaries, you will be your child's best friend. And I urge everybody to hear my TEDx talk, which is Turning Control to Connection. If you do a search, you can either go onto my website or you can search for it. And that is, it gives you key milestones on how to become your child's best friend while being a parent. Now comes the how. We've talked about what are boundaries, why we need boundaries. Now let's talk about how do we establish those boundaries. Open and effective communication. The more you communicate, the easier life becomes. Clear family rules. We as parents tend to talk too much. We tend to repeat our instructions. And my son is at an age now, he's 21. He constantly tells me, he says, Mom, you just said this. And I've told him that. I'm like, I need you to hold me to it. Because sometimes we as parents get so caught up in our emotion and our love that we forget that we're repeating ourselves. Be consistent. Patience is your best friend. I have a program which is called Everything Begins With You. If you work on yourself as a parent, your parenting journey is 90 times easier. When parents come to me saying, my child is a teenager and I will need you to work with them, I always tell them, are you willing to work with me? Yes, I will work with your child, but are you willing to work with me? And 80% of the time, I'm able to solve the problem by working with the parent. Take things to the end. Your word has value. When you say, if you break a boundary, this is going to be the consequence, and you don't follow through with the consequence, what you're essentially telling your child is, my word has no value. I will set the boundary, but if you don't follow it, I'm okay. There is leeway. And you can be rest assured your child will not follow it and break the rule again. Be trustworthy. Show up at that games, those things, those extracurriculars at school. When your child is acknowledged or when your child is interested in something, show up at that because that builds trust. Have those open conversations on boundary setting. Go back and forth. TV time. I need you to spend an hour on television in a day. No, mom, no, dad, I want an hour and 30 minutes. Why do you want an hour and 30 minutes? This is why I want it. Okay. I I don't agree with it. Can we settle at 1 hour, 15 minutes or 1 hour, 10 minutes? Have those conversations. Question why do they want a different boundary than what you're suggesting and be open to receiving. Recognize appropriate behavior, but not the cost of manipulation. Your child got a grade A in class, and you turn around and say, you know what? I'm super happy that you got A in class. You did very well. Now, when are we getting the next A? Or when are we studying? Now you need to study harder so you can continue to build that A. Versus, I really appreciate that you worked hard, you were conscientious, you followed a discipline, and you studied every day from 6 to 7. You asked questions, you were very dedicated, and I'm super proud of you for getting the A. Continue the behavior. There is a difference between manipulating so you can get them the next day and honestly giving the right feedback of appropriate behavior. This is a big one. Never undermine the other parent. Somehow, when two people come together, it's always one person has a different viewpoint, the other person has a different viewpoint between the two parents. Sort it out behind closed doors, but when you come in front of the child, make sure that you're speaking the same language. Be creative with your consequences and important to let them fail. Unless and until your child falls, your child is not going to know how to get up. I think we're getting hard on time, so I'm going to move a little bit faster. Age appropriate boundaries, as I said, continue to change the boundaries as your child shifts in age. I will forward this um, the presentation today, and I will share it with you because I know there's a lot of content here. Establishing non-negotiables. I often hear people say, you know what, my child doesn't listen because they don't have the brain power to hold what you're telling them. You have to get to that place where they respect you enough that the first time you say it, they listen. Keep it short, simple, age appropriate. We've already talked about all of this. Establish your non-negotiables. What is it that you're ready to negotiate on, and what is it that you don't want to talk about it because you are honoring, you are taking, you are the one who's keeping them safe. Consistency is key to build trust. If you're going to do one thing one day and the next day you're not going to follow that boundary, there is going to be no trust and you're not going to be taken seriously. Digital boundaries, as I said, acknowledge the profound impact of technology on children's lives, including social interaction. So what are your digital boundaries? At 8, they will be different. At 10, they will be different. At 11, they will be different. At every age, at 17, they'll be different. So acknowledge that your child needs digital boundaries because they're unable to set those digital boundaries for themselves. Again, balancing independence and boundaries, open dialogue, gradual steps, safety nets allows increasing level of independence. As the age grows, the boundaries change, the independence changes. What you're willing to give at 13, you're not willing to give at 14, 15, 16, 17. Consequences and accountability. Consequences should be directly related to actions. Every consequence should not be your phone goes away. Then you're at some point in time, your child is going to say, okay, take it away. So make sure your consequences are directly related to actions. There is consistency, there is accountability. You are fair in your consequences. We've already talked about this. Flexibility and adaptation. What does it do? Circumstances change. So flexibility acknowledges this evolution. It teaches them resilience, encouraging ongoing conversations where the rules need to be adjusted based on new challenges. Unless and until you have those conversations and listen to what's going on in your child's life, you will not be able to be flexible. You will not be able to adapt those boundaries to your child's circumstances. Okay, so this is the guiding principles, what we've talked about in the past 40 minutes. I'm just going to break them down and put them together for you. Take a screenshot if you'd like of this. Guiding principles. What are the guiding principles? Communication is key. Balance, freedom, and responsibilities. Lead by example. This is the best one. Is if you want something to change, you need to model that behavior. Whenever a parent says, my child is not listening to me, I always turn around and say, don't worry that the child is not listening to you. Worry that your child is watching you. Non-negotiables. What are your non-negotiables? How are you being consistent? When you're talking to them, are you being an authoritarian parent? Are you being an authoritative parent? Are you communicating with empathy? Are you communicating with anger? And yeah. Adaptability. As the circumstances change, are you willing to adapt the boundaries? Teach responsibility. Use consequences as learning tools, teaching accountability for actions and choices. Digital balance. Are you setting healthy digital boundaries for yourself and for your child? And of course, your child should not be scared of you. That is not a gold medal parent. No. When your child is scared of you, they're going to lie to you. There is a difference between your child respecting you and your child being fearful of you. So encourage openness. Okay, we've already talked about that. We've already talked about this. Now, what do I do? This is what I do. I have 3 coaching styles. I'm based in Fairfax, Virginia. Whatever I do virtually. I work worldwide, not only in States, but worldwide, and everything is virtual. I do one-on-one sessions for parents, teenagers, and adults. I do group sessions. My group coaching is called Everything Begins With You. And I speak. I speak at Fairfax County Public Schools. I'm a TEDx speaker. I'm speaking at James Madison University, Virginia Tech. Um, Westminster schools. I've speak at multiple places throughout the year. I'm a keynote speaker, and you can get all of these. So if there is educator in the room and you're looking for me to speak, please feel free to reach out, and you can visit my website for details. And lastly, I'd like you to scan the QR code. I send out a newsletter every Tuesday. It's a story. It's never to sell you anything. There is nothing to sell in there. It's just a story, spreading knowledge, spreading the cheer. Every week I write a story which will be very helpful. So scan it, become a part of my newsletter. You receive it every Tuesday at 8:30 in the morning. I'm very, very grateful that you showed up today. And thank you for the opportunity to the FCPS team and the community at large. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We will move into our Q&A session. Participants can click on the icon Q&A at the bottom of the screen to type in any questions that you have. We do have some that have come in, so I will go ahead and start with those. The first one
I'm going
asks,
to just give me 1 second,
sure.
then let me just split the screen. All right. All right. Let's go. Yeah.
Okay, so the first question is, how do you set and enforce boundaries with older teenagers? My son is 18 and thinks he is an adult, which he is legally, but he is still dependent on his parents for most things.
Having a conversation. What are you trying to set your boundary on? Have your why very clear. When you have your why clear and you're able to have that conversation and explain rationally why you think that boundary is important and how it can impact either their safety or their well-being, they will be more willing to have that conversation. But without a why, it's very difficult, whether that's a child at 18 or at 21. When people say that they're 18 years old and they're capable of taking decisions for themselves, no, they're not. They're just 18. 18 age has nothing to do with it. Yes, legally they're 18, but are they mentally developed? No. So set them down, give them the why, use empathy to have that conversation, be vulnerable with them, open to adjust the boundary, listen to their viewpoint. Hope this helps.
So I think this next one might be a continuation of the first question. It reads, I feel like we've not done a good job of setting boundaries with him when he was younger, and now he is not amenable to setting and enforcing clear boundaries. We get no response, quote unquote, no responses. He is on the spectrum, but that is not an excuse. He still needs to respect and work with us. I often feel like I've failed.
How old is your child?
I think this may be the same teenager, the 18-year-old.
So first of all, you did not fail. you did the best that you could. And be very proud of yourself for the child that you've developed. Parenting does not come with a manual, so don't be too hard on yourself. Can things change? Absolutely, things can change. It depends on how much are you willing to change. And let me tell you one thing, just like you're hurting, your child is equally hurting. Reach out to me. This is a clear case of a misunderstanding. Can it be fixed? Without a doubt, it can be fixed. Reach out to me and don't be too hard on yourself, and make sure you're vulnerable with your child. Because the minute you're vulnerable and you are open and say, yes, this is something that I did, they will be more reciprocal and they will be willing to listen to you more. You haven't failed.
So the next question asks, is there an age when it's too late to start with boundaries?
No, there's no age. There is no age. As long as you're willing to be vulnerable and you're willing to have those conversations. Boundaries can be of different types. Yes, at 18, it's going to be a little hard for you to set a boundary of if the child has never had a boundary of when they need to come back home. But can you have those conversations rationally? If you have those conversations rationally and vulnerably, you can still change.
Okay. Any differences in your recommendations on boundaries for teens with ODD and ADHD? Um, what is the tolerance of family therapy in improving relationships between child and parent? What is the role, my apologies. What is the role of family therapy in improving relationships between child and parent?
So yesterday I made a comment at Westminster when I was speaking, and the principal told me that's a very bold comment. So I don't know if I want to make it here, but I'm going to be a little bit diplomatic in answering that question. What is the role of therapy in family relationships? It works as long as you are able to set goals for yourself and identify where is it that you want to go. I always tell people who are doing therapy, have a very clear vision of what is your end result. Where do you want to go? Because otherwise, therapy can be ongoing. As you say, as you all know, therapy can be never ending. You can sit on that couch and go to a therapist for your life. But if you have, and that's the difference with coaching and therapy. Coaching is always forward looking. People, when do people come to me? People come to me when they have sat with a therapist for 4 years, 2 years, 1 year, 6 months, and there is this limited change. And therapy, every human should go to a therapist. I go to a therapist because it's absolutely essential to break down your emotions. But if you're not able to move yourself forward and have a clear vision of where is it that you want to take your journey with your child, it can be challenging. And you can continuously get therapy, but never get anything out of it. I hope I was clear on that one. But that's my, if I wasn't clear, please feel free to ask a counter question.
Thank you. So the first part of that question, and we had a similar question come in about additional thoughts for children who are neurodivergent, like ADHD or on the spectrum. The other question was regarding teens with ODD. So recommendations on boundaries for teens in that situation.
For teens with ODD and ADHD, I'm not an ODD or an ADHD specialist, but I do work with teens, a lot of teens with ADHD. Excuse me. ADHD teens are highly intelligent children. And the boundaries that, in a nutshell, what I'm going to say is that the boundaries that you establish for ADHD children should be done one at a time till it sinks in. So slow boundaries, clear boundaries, but one at a time boundary. I hope that helps. I'm not going to say anything more on that because I'm not an expert on ADHD, but I do work with ADHD kids.
Thank you. The next question asks, how do you give them privacy but monitor their digital footprint on YouTube or cell phones?
So believe it or not, I've never had 360 for my child, ever. And I'm a single mother. So I'm going to take you back to trust. Very, very important to build trust. And then establish those digital boundaries. We're talking about two different things. We're talking about giving them privacy and monitoring them. If you're giving them privacy, you can't monitor them, right? You give them privacy, but you set those parental controls on it. I never even had parental controls on the phone, but that was me. To me, trust is very important. So I would say that instead of focusing on privacy and digital boundaries, focus on developing the trust with your child and then go on to privacy. Because once the trust is rock solid, then you give them privacy and establish those boundaries. Will be a breach of trust? Yes, there will still be a breach of trust. But the breach of trust will be much lower and less dangerous and more secure. Versus no trust, the breach will be much higher. Monitoring, if you monitor them and they figure out that you're monitoring them, it's going to be even worse because once they figure it out, they're going to begin to lie. So focus on developing trust by having those open conversations, being vulnerable and showing empathy.
Thank you. So we have one more question that's come in, and I know you spoke a bit about applying this to children with ADHD. This question also asks about adapting these strategies for children who um, are on the autism spectrum or have a speech delay. The parent asks, he's 9 now, but I'm preparing myself to tackle the future challenges by learning what can be done from now.
So because I'm not a specialist, what I'm going to again say is figure out what your boundaries are with your partner or your spouse. And I think once you have those figured out very clearly, um, start laying them out now, slowly. That's what I would say. And I would stop that because I'm not an expert. So I don't want to say something that doesn't fit.
Okay, another question has come in. They say, to me, lying is a huge deal. What are appropriate consequences to set for breaking trust?
Um, it depends where you want to take it. So yes, lying is a big deal. Are they still? So again, let's go to the root cause of lying. The root cause of lying is fear. They're lying to you because they're scared of you. Okay. So that's one. Let's establish that. So focus on how are you going to take away that fear. When let's give you an example. Let's say the child is gets a grade C and comes back a very lame example, but I'll give you because this will fit with everybody. Let's say the child gets a C and comes back and tells you that they've got an A. They're lying to you. But why are they lying to you? Probably they're lying to you because they know that your 100% focus is on grade. So if you were to change your dialogue or change the way you deal with it going forward, saying, I don't care what your grades you get, as long as you're putting in your 100%. I need to see effort. As long as I see effort, I'm okay, even if the grades are low. You will see that your child will begin to work harder and smarter and will focus on getting you the grades. The reason that the grades are not coming right now, the reason the child is lying to you is because they're scared of you. So focus on the fear. Again, go down to the root of the problem. There is a
So,
very vast difference between respect and fear. The child should not be fearful of you. The child should respect you.
So the parent clarified that the lying is to get something that he wants.
The child, so then have that conversation. If the lying is to get, so they're being manipulative. Now, let me take this back. Yes. I'm going to ask you a question. Were you manipulative as a child? I think every child is manipulative to some extent because they're in survival. Okay. So first, cut the person some slack. But at the same time, you don't want to encourage a child from lying. So call them out on their lies and establish a consequence of. So first, call them out, establish the consequence. What consequence do you want to establish? Whatever they're trying to get, say, now that you've lied to me, I am going to give this to you in the next 3 months or whenever you want to, provided um, you show this behavior, the behavior that you're looking for. So that I would say would be a consequence if they're being manipulative. And cut them some slack. All children are manipulative. But if you don't want them to become their personality, you need to call them out on their manipulative behavior. You need to help them identify that that is manipulative behavior. They don't understand it. And even if they do understand it, they understand it from their childlike brain. So hope that helps.
So we'll wait a minute more to see if anyone else is typing a question, but as of now, there are no more that have come through, but we'll wait. So if you do have a question, please go ahead and type it in, and we'll answer as they come.
I'll just change the screen in the meanwhile. If anybody hasn't taken a screenshot, take a screenshot now.
We do have the webinar evaluation that was posted in the chat. So I would ask if you have a moment to please go ahead and click on that and take our evaluation. But seeing no more questions, I'll go ahead and end. Thank you everyone for being here today and have a wonderful Friday.
Please feel free to put the evaluation in. It really matters to me. I want to do better for you. So I would love to hear your feedback.